Today I'm going to show you guys how to install fender flares on your 2022 and up Toyota Tundra. I'll be honest, I think fender flares are usually kind of dumb. People make them look really bad, unfortunately. So if you have stock offset wheels and tires and we see you with fender flares, we're going to laugh at you and probably post pictures of you on the internet. Unfortunately, I have to have fender flares because of the offset of my new wheels and tires. I keep getting rock chips all along my paint. Where my shop is down a gravel road, and these BFGs just pick up rocks like crazy and fling them all down the side of the truck. So you can see I've already done the passenger side here. We're going to move on, and I'm going to show you how to do the installation on the driver's side. I'm going to show you guys how to do the driver's side, but I recommend you start with the passenger side. Passenger side rear is what I would recommend. You want to do the one that's farthest away from what you're going to see every day, just in case you have a little bit of a learning curve. So start with this one back here if you can. The rears are a little bit easier because you don't have to put any new holes in like you do on the front. So the first thing you're going to do is get all your flares and stuff out of your big old cardboard box you got. They're all going to be wrapped in this nice clear wrapper right here. And the very first thing that you're going to do is install the rubber seal that's going to go all the way around the fender flare. So this goes between the truck paint and the fender flare right up here. That's the only spot it's going to go around this outside. It's not going to go on the underside there. I'll be honest, this is the most difficult and frustrating part of this whole job. Everything else is super easy, but getting this on is pretty meticulous, and you gotta be careful. So first thing we'll do is do that. I have this surface up here, this little soft bed cover to work on. Pick something that is not going to scratch the plastic, so don't put this down in the concrete or anything like that. Do it inside in the carpet maybe. That'd probably be a really good place to do it. So take this, we're going to flip it upside down. I'm going to stick it up there so we can get some good camera angles, and I'll show you how to put this trim on. Okay, I've got this fender flare upside down. Excuse the cicadas. And what we're going to do is install it with the 3M on the inside here, and you're pretty much going to set it up like this. All the way down, but it's going to be sticking. So let me see if I can show you that up close. Show you how that goes on. So the 3M side is back behind and underneath. And the goal is to push this part down as hard as you can because you want it to be on this squared surface right here. It's going to be a little bit hard to explain, in a video, but once you see this thing, you'll understand how it goes on. If you want to kind of see how it fits, you can obviously just kind of push it on there before you pull the adhesive. One thing to look out for is going to be if the seal starts to pull away from the plastic a little bit right there. This is a really common thing. This is the most frustrating part. So you've just got to be very, very slow with pushing this thing down and getting all your bends proper. So just take your time. I like to push it down kind of like that. That way it goes down. I'm using my back finger or my pointer finger here to push on the adhesive forward. And what we're going to do is just peel back a little bit at a time, just a few inches at a time as we push this down. And be persistent. Really take your time here. Your fingers and arms are probably going to get tired, but just take a break if you need to. This is the most important part to make these things look good for a long time. So let me see if I can get this thing in focus here. I'm not going to video this whole process. I don't think there's much point in that, but I want to show you at least how you start it. Alright, so we'll just pull just a few inches back. And then we're going to push and wiggle really hard. So you want to wiggle it because if you just push it down and leave it, it may not actually be compressed how it needs to be. So we'll just smooth it down like that, and then as you do more, you'll just push and wiggle, pull a bit more of the red film back, and push and wiggle, and just keep doing that until you get this whole thing on. So you can see it's frustrating. I'm already starting to come loose right there. Just take your time. This is going to be a little bit frustrating, to be honest. That's why I recommend you start with that passenger rear. So if you mess up or do something improperly, it's not on the fender you're going to see every single day when you get into your truck, because that will drive you crazy. Next up, we need to remove the screws that are on the Tundra wheel guard or inner fender. The ones we're going to remove are going to correspond to the bolt holes on your fender flare. So if you're unsure which ones, just hold it up here in the arch and you can see there's 2 up here, 2 on the left, and 2 on the right. They're all going to be a 10 mil. I would grab a short socket 1/4 inch. That's probably going to be the best tool to get these things out. Now that our hardware is removed, we can install the fender flare. What I recommend is trying to get it up a little bit higher and then pushing it down into place. And what that's going to do is just keep the seal from folding in the wrong direction, that rubber seal there. So once it's on the truck, it's really not going to go anywhere because the pressure of holding it against the body is going to compress those seals, keep them nice and flat. So start with these top 2, get them in first on the rear, then you can check the top of your seal and see if it's folded over anywhere. And as long as it's not, then you can go ahead and start the rest of your screws. Definitely don't tighten them down until you get all 6 of your screws started. For some reason I was missing one over here on the very bottom left. But I also had an extra one from whenever I removed the fender liner spacers, which I'll put a link to. I did in a separate video. Alright, before you tighten your screws down, just go around, check this seal, and see if it's folded in. Let me show you what that looks like when it is folded in. Alright, so right here you can see where the seal is folded under itself, so you don't want to finish the fender flare install until you get that out. Sometimes pushing on it will get it out just like that did. Other times you may have to get something a little bit pointy and kind of pull it out of there. So yeah, sometimes just wiggling it, pushing on it back and forth will get it out. But check around the whole thing before you tighten it down the rest of the way, because once it's tightened down it'll be harder to get those folded over sections out. Once you have your fender flares installed on the truck, then we're going to work on the rivets right here. So as of right now, Rough Country is sending out both black and chrome rivets. They also give you the option to buy extra rivets of either color. So I did buy an extra entire set of these black, well, I guess they're not really rivets, just little plastic clips. So there's just a little piece of paper on the back that you're going to need to pull off. I recommend you use a multi-tool or tweezers or something like that. It's the easiest way to get them off, but all you're going to do is peel off the paper and then snap them in all the way around. This rear flare is done. You can see how it looks with all the rivets in it. The seal is nice and uniform all the way around, and now we can move on to the front. The only difference on the front is that we're going to have to make 2 new holes because there are not any screws up here in the top of the arch like the rear. So here and here, we're going to put in a couple inserts, and then we're going to use some self-tapping screws that come included in this kit to install the rest of that. It's spelled out pretty well in the instructions, but I'll show you how to do it. First thing before we can do any of that though is we need to get this next fender flare completely assembled. So we'll go ahead and do the same process with the seal, installing it on that flare, and then we're going to partially install it on the fender so we can mark our holes. We're just about to mock up the front fender so we can mark our holes for the screws that we're going to tap in, but I wanted to show you which screws that we're actually going to use to mount. So this one here, we're going to skip 1, 2, 3, and this very lower one you need to remove. And then over here, we have the lowest one, skip 1, 2, and then we're going to remove this one right there. So I've already got those 4 removed. Now we can mock up this fender and mark it. You can use pretty much anything as long as you can see it. So we're going to be marking up in this plastic here. So you can use something dark or light, whatever you want. You're not going to see it once the flare's on. Okay, not going to be too picky on this flare sitting perfectly, and I mean the seals. We just kind of want to get it up in place and get all 4 screws started. That way we can mark our two top positions. You obviously don't have to thread these screws in all the way. As long as they're started, that'll be good enough. Okay, perfect. So make sure this is pushed in, and then we're going to grab a Sharpie here and make a mark. I'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so coming down inside here, we've got two holes, one there and one there. And what you want to do is push the flare in just a tiny bit, I mean just barely, enough so you know that it's seated. Then you can go in here and make your marks. So there's one and two. Now we can pull our fender liner or our fender flare back off. Okay, now we're looking up at the factory flare. We're going to take these pieces in and slide them in with the biggest side or longest side down, right where our marks are. We're going to push it on until it stops. The mark that you made doesn't have to line up perfectly to the hole, as long as your clip is in line with it, if that makes sense. So you're just going to push it in there, push it in until it stops. Then we can put the fender flare back on. Okay, once those clips are in place, all we have to do left is just hang the flare the same as we did on the rear. Find this one here is the easiest one to start. You can kind of push here and it supports the weight of the rest of the flare. Now I'm going to go around the top, make sure none of it is folded over. Oh yeah, we got a big old fold over here. But I have to remove this screw to fix this piece because it's folded over pretty bad. This is definitely an improvement that could be made on these flares. I think it would really be great if these seals were already installed. I don't know if that's even a thing, you know, feasibly that they could do before they send them out, because they may get damaged, but there's one thing that I could say that would make these a lot better. Alright, I'm not going to get these tight with a tool just yet. Just want to get them started. And then I'm going to take a drill with a very stubby Phillips head in it, and then we're going to put these two top screws in. If you can fit a screwdriver in there, that's great. But this is a little bit easier for me. So my front one threaded through the previous plastic piece just a little bit, and then my rear one did not. That one was actually didn't go through the old plastic at all. So just make sure this is where you want it. I actually want mine to be clamped in a little bit more. This part I could see being beneficial if you had someone to help you. You can have them push on it while you tighten that screw down. You want this to look really well sucked up against the fender. Okay, I think that one's good. Alright, now we can go ahead and tighten the rest of these 10 mil screws down. Remember to give it a little bit of pressure against the fender so those seals look nice and they're doing their job. It is easy to strip these things out, so be careful when you're tightening these. You want to use the smallest tool that you have to do the job. It's really easy to strip them out, especially the lowest ones on either side. This front one is the worst because it doesn't have very much that it threads into. Alright, so that is it for the fender flares. All I have to do is plug in my little rivets and then we're going to be all done. And that's all there is to it as far as installing fender flares on your 2022 and up Toyota Tundra. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. Thanks for watching. Okay, a little bit of a helpful tip. Just in case you mess up any of this trim and have to redo it, you have a little over 2 feet to play with. So this is what I have left over after doing all 4 fender flares. So if you start to mess up or you lose some of the adhesive, like if you have to pull it up and put it back on, this is how much you have to play with before you run out.